Welcome to today's presentation, The Guide to Using iPad Pro, from one IT pro to another. My name is Nick Thompson, and I'll be your host today. And we'll be talking with a couple of other folks here at Jamf about their experience using iPad Pro. So let's look at today's agenda. We're going to first cover the Casper suite. We want to do just a little overview of the Casper suite to make sure that kind of everyone knows a little bit about the product and kind of have sort of a baseline knowledge for everybody. Then we're going to talk with two of our employees here at Jamf that have been using the iPad Pro for a while now, and we've got somebody that works in our sales department and somebody that works in our IT department. Then we're going to talk about how, iOS in the enterprise itself, kind of things to consider, and some best practices around that. And then finally, how to implement an iPad program of your own. And again, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So let's dive into that first topic, an overview of the Casper suite. Now, we are Jamf Software, and we help organizations succeed with Apple. That's our mission, right? It's written right on our wall. And we've been doing this for a while. We've been managing Macs way back in 2002, really long before they were popular in the enterprise. And the way we do that is we manage them using our product called the Casper Suite. Now, the Casper Suite is a set of administrative tools to help you manage your Apple devices. At the heart of this suite is something called the JSS, or the Jamf Software Server. That's the management server component. The Casper Suite also includes a set of apps that run natively on the Mac, and these are used for management by building packages for deployment, remote access to client machines, imaging, as well as enrolling devices. And there's some apps that are for the end user as well too. Something called Casper Focus, which is more for our education customers, and something called Self-Service, which is our internal catalog of apps. And we'll be talking about self-service a little bit later on too. Now, the JSS, or again, the Jamf Software Server, really just acts like a web server. So that means you can run it in any web browser that you would like, and it communicates to all of your clients over the internet. The JSS itself can run on an OS X, a Windows, or a Linux server if you're choosing to do on-premise deployments. We also offer a service where we can host the JSS for you up in the cloud. A little history with us and Apple here. Apple's operating systems have evolved a lot over the past 15 years, really since the birth of Mac OS X in 2001. And iOS has come along too. Right around 2007 with the iPhone, they've had annual releases almost every single year. The pace of innovation here that Apple's doing is just astonishing to see. In fact, they've been taking iOS and they're kind of making derivatives of it, if you will, that run on our watches now and run on our TVs. It's pretty amazing to see all the stuff that Apple's been doing. Now, we here at Jamf, we've of course been alongside Apple this entire way, and we've been releasing versions of the Casper Suite to support every major release that Apple's been coming out with. So if you're using Casper Suite to manage your Apple products, you're going to be able to be supporting the newest operating systems right away from Apple. So now that we have a little baseline knowledge about the Casper Suite itself, we want to talk about some real-world experiences using iPad Pro. Ever since iPad Pro came out, we've had kind of a little challenge here in our office of can we replace our Macs with iPad Pro? And to talk a little bit about his experience here, I've got Josh Jagfeld. Josh Jagfeld is a sales manager for us, and he took this iPad challenge. Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Hey, great, Nick. Thanks for passing it on. I really had a great experience using iPad Pro since it was released, and in many ways, it has completely replaced my need to use a Mac every day. I was a little surprised by that, to be completely honest. But as I sat and thought about kind of the things that stuck out to me the most along the way, I would say that there were three things that I would really probably comment on the most. The first is that I discovered ultimately that there was very little that I couldn't do. I kind of walked in expecting that I was going to hit some brick walls and that I would have problems getting certain tasks done. I figured there'd be workflows that wouldn't work or things that I just couldn't do because of the platform or whatever it might be. And what I discovered, much to my surprise and delight, was that almost everything I tried to do worked just fine. And in the instances where it didn't, all I had to do was investigate how maybe it was just a different workflow that I needed to use because of a different operating system. And sure enough, most everything worked out. So that was a really pleasant first surprise during the whole process. The second thing that I'd say really stood out to me is that we are just very healthfully in between a platform shift right now. Many people on this call will probably remember a couple of the big platform shifts of the past 10, 15 years or so. We had the transition from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0. And a lot of the technologies that kind of went from taking the web from the static sort of boring place that it used to be, even though it was amazing at the time, into what is today an immersive, rich experience that is responsive to the size of your screen, has a lot of sophisticated tie-ins to back-end systems, and all of these things that go along with it. I would say that that's a good approximation of where we are right now with platform shift between our traditional desktop or laptop operating systems that were built for mouse and keyboard first. And now we're moving into a world that really is much more intimately connected to the person. It's a very symbiotic relationship to use iOS all the time, every day. And it feels very different than when you're using something like Windows or OS 10. The other thing that I would say really reminded me of this moment in time is the shift of operating systems and kind of their renaissance around the turn of the century, where we had this changeover from OS 9 to OS 10, or Windows 95 and 98 to Windows XP, and the operating systems of kind of today. And, you think about what the operating system used to be. It was this technology that was made for either no internet or the slow internet, if we all remember that, where dial-up modems were your only way to connect to the internet. It wasn't built around the internet. And then as we changed over into the 2000s, we had operating systems start to be very aware of the internet and have it built in. Well, now today, I think with iOS and iPad Pro really as the personification of this big change, we're ready for another one of those massive shifts in platform awareness and connectedness to the user. So those were the two things that I think stuck out to me most about this platform shift that's going on right now. And ultimately, I think the point is that the software world just really hasn't reached the point where multi-touch is fully embraced or understood. There were so many moments where I realized the web form I was using or the software that had been ported to iOS was really written to think about a mouse interaction first. Smaller tap targets, fields that are hard to tap on, things like that. Just made it feel sometimes like old software was being ripped into this new reality. But that said, when I could contrast that moment with beautifully designed software that was iPad Pro first and iOS first, it was easy to understand how far software is going to be able to come when people have got their heads wrapped around multi-touch and Apple Pencil as the input tool, because it is it's so different than using a mouse. And that really, I think, brings me to the third major thing that stood out to me, is that direct interaction with content, being able to actually physically manipulate the device that I'm working with and the digital assets that I'm working with is more profound than I thought it would be. There was a multitude of moments where I was working along, and you can see in this screenshot right here, where I had to do things like mark up a screenshot for a UI review, or I had to send notes about a document from one of our teams as reference to another team to have it edited or something like that. Now, historically, it's easy enough to open a PDF, drop some text in, but it takes a little while, and it's kind of a weird approximation of what you would do in real life. Well, with iPad Pro, it was all completely different. It literally felt like I was working off of a piece of paper that someone had handed to me, and all I had to do was pick up the Apple Pencil, mark up things, add in my notes, and send it right along. So in some ways, it made the process maybe faster. It made it more ecologically conscious, and I think above all things, made me feel for the first time connected to these digital things that for so long we felt disconnected from. And so I think the big point here is when you think about how so much of our software and so much of our work life is built around these layers of abstraction that we've built up over time. You've got the user to the mouse, and then the mouse approximates movement to the cursor on the screen, and the cursor on the screen is what interacts with the content. We've now, with iOS, Multitouch, and iPad Pro, have destroyed all of those abstractions and are now directly connected to the content that we're manipulating. Things like signing documents, things like adding notes, things like taking notes during meetings through OneNote or any other app that allows for handwriting recognition. And even just doing fun art using Apple Pencil, with as amazing as it is and how fast it is, literally felt like writing on paper. So I would say those are the three really big things that stood out to me. First is that I was able to do almost everything that I set out to do. And in the instance where I wasn't able to, it was really because third-party software hadn't caught up yet. The second thing that stood out, just to review, is that we're very much in between a platform shift right now. I remember how bad software was for smartphones when they first came out and how far it's come in that time. We're on the precipice of that same thing now for multi-touch and tablets. And then third, this big thing about direct user interaction. These layers of abstraction with mouse and keyboard really made me appreciate when I could pick up a device and directly manipulate the things on the screen, how much more personal I felt and connected to that device, and how much more I wanted to use it to get my work done than I'd ever felt before. And those are the three biggest takeaways from my time using iPad Pro exclusively.
Thank you so much. I remember seeing some of these documents that you sent my way after marking them up, and it just seemed like you were able to do it very, very fast. So, verdict: how much do you use your iPad Pro now compared to your Mac?
It's amazing. I have this huge iMac sitting on my desk, and it's beautiful. But every day, I just feel attracted to pick up the iPad and move around and work in a bunch of different contexts. And so, I would say my iPad Pro is still by far my predominant device in my day-to-day usage.
That's great. Thanks for your insight, Josh. We really appreciate it here. So next up to talk about his iPad experience is Mike Vandeliner. And Mike's on our IT team here at Jamf, and so certainly has a very intimate experience about using our products like the Casper Suite and the JSS, and now using the iPad Pro. Mike, tell us about your experience.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me to be here today. I'm really excited to talk about iPad and iPad Pro. We're going to kind of go into everyday practical uses of how I use the iPad as part of my workflow, but just to kind of get things started, I want to say, I work for Jamf. I work in the IT department. It's my job to put these things in the hands of employees and find a way to make it work if that's what they want. But my excitement for all this is I've used Macs my entire life, and when the iPad came out in 2010, that since then has become like my most used and most loved device. I love the iPad. And when the iPad Pro was introduced, that was the first time where I really saw the opportunity for fully replacing the Mac with an iPad and asking myself and challenging myself if I can get what I need to do on a daily basis done with just iPad. So, quick example up on the screen is just multitasking, right? This is a new thing with iOS 9 and iPad Pro, some of the other iPads as well, but the iPad Pro really exemplifies it because you can take two different applications and share different portions of the screen. So you've got 2/3 and 1/3 for, right now I've got a drawing app up on the screen called Procreate, which lets me just use the Apple Pencil in a natural way, work on a design, do some sketching if I need to, and you can see I'm in a conversation with somebody else on my team saying, hey, I need something done quickly. I have a great way to just, pen to paper, pencil to display, make it happen, and share it right from there. There's no context switching for me. That's kind of one of the biggest things I love about iPad is I have this singular device letting me do all my work. I don't have to constantly move between like my phone and my Mac or my Mac and notebook. It's actually kind of bringing everything together all into one.
That's great, yeah. And Anybody that's a keen observer might notice the Post-it note now on our website. Thanks to Mike here. So we've got another screenshot that you shared with me, and this is kind of a little bit more in the realm of kind of hyper multitasking.
Right.
Tell me what kind of is going on here.
I purposely made this one look a little bit more complex, just to kind of get an idea that with iPad, you're no longer you're not forced to use just a singular app at once. You now have the opportunity to bring multiple things in together. So for example, on the left hand, 2/3 of the screen, I've got OmniGroup's great OmniFocus application, which lets me make a list of different tasks that I know I need to get done throughout the day and the week, schedule them out, and then it can constantly remind me, comparing against my calendar, what needs to get done right now. So you can see that with, on the side, another application named Copied. And Copied is unique in that it lets me sync my clipboard history between all of my devices, Mac included if I use them regularly, and have it all in one place. So if I find a neat link to an article, if I find documentation, if I need to know a serial number, anything like that, copy it on a device, have it everywhere, and then feed that back into these other applications. So again, using OmniFocus, using my clipboard history to kind of determine what do I need to work on next and remembering that. And then in the lower left-hand corner, you can see what it's just a screenshot of an iPad, somebody using an iPad, but in truth, that's a video. So with iPad Pro, you can actually have picture-in-picture. So I can have something else overlay the top of my applications and view and review, even like video chat to some extent, all these same things, or all these things at the same time on the iPad.
Yeah, that's great. And it just underscores really how much of a multitasking device this really can be. So now part of your job obviously is receiving tickets, responding to those tickets, and then working inside of the JSS to execute some of those things. Tell us what we have going on here in this screenshot.
So there's a lot of challenges with saying, give up the Mac, take on the iPad, and see if it can do the job. Is it doing the right job? Am I using the right tool? And I think if you're moving from like a Mac to the iPad, you have to ask yourself the question, does the iPad do enough of the same job of what the Mac would usually get done for you? And I would kind of turn that and actually ask, can the iPad be the new default? And can you, if you move beyond the iPad, then maybe the Mac is there to help you fill the gap. But can the iPad be the new default? What do I have to do on a daily basis working in IT to help, enable everyone else in the company? Well, I have a lot of tools at my disposal, not, the least of which being the JSS and the Casper suite. Luckily, that's web-based, right? That runs on a website. I just need a web browser to be able to do that. A lot of the other tools I use, email, calendaring, that's all very common in every organization, and we use Exchange, which is common as well. You just need an application to act as the front end for any of those services. Awesome thing about iOS, there's tens of thousands of apps, hundreds of thousands of apps, if that, and there's always multiple options for finding a new front end of a service that you're using if there's not just a simple website. So what we're looking at here, you're actually seeing 3 panes at once. In the previous examples, I had just 2 applications up at once, maybe the video is a third. This actually looks like I'm running 3 applications at once, and that's because I'm using a specific web browser named iCab Mobile, and iCab lets you do split screen inside that one app. So I can see 2 websites at once, and then on top of that, like a second or third app for my calendar, OneNote, HipChat, so I can talk to other people in the organization, do all these different things simultaneously. But one of the unique things that that iCab does beyond doing split screen is it can actually act as it can identify itself as any sort of a web browser that you want. So as I said, a lot of these tools that we're using are web-based, but if you're coming at that website from Safari on an iOS device, sometimes that website identifies you as being, say, an iPhone, and it tries to serve you a lesser mobile version of that site, and you can't get access to all the same tools that you would have had you access that same site from, say, a Mac or PC. So what iCab cleverly does is you can tell it to identify itself as a Mac or a PC. The website doesn't know any better, serves you the normal version of that site that you would see anyway, and have access to all the same tools. So this gives me the opportunity to run all the same web apps or websites that I would typically use on a desktop or a laptop, but have it available on my iPad all the time.
That's great, yeah. Now, of course, your role in IT doesn't keep you just at your desk all the time. You are increasingly mobile, and certainly the iPad must be helping you with that. Can you speak to that at all? We've got a really nice screenshot here of the JSS has a bunch of screenshots, but tell us the story kind of behind that.
So part of the intention of me being able to take on the iPad is, as even Josh was alluding to earlier when he was talking about being able to interact directly with materials, working inside of IT, my goal is actually to interact more with the individual. The technology should kind of just disappear in that sort of communication. And with iPad, it's a very mobile device, right? It's like the lid of a MacBook. It's very light. It's very portable, has an all-day battery. I want to be able to move around the office. I don't want to, even though if I have a laptop, most people just end up sitting at their desks anyway, plugged into a display, Ethernet, power, all that kind of stuff. iPad gives the opportunity, if you have a keyboard to connect to it, like the smart keyboard on the iPad Pro, you've got the pencil, you can go wherever you want to go and just work. You've got Wi-Fi, you have LTE in some cases, you have all the tools at your disposal. And what it frees you to do is, instead of trying to talk to everyone through emails or sending instant messages, small enough office, I can get some steps in and go find somebody and actually talk to them and actually discuss the issue. So in the screenshot, you can see, again, a portion of the screen is the JSS. If somebody has a problem with their computer, instead of me just trying to remotely debug it or something, I can actually go have a conversation with that person, pull up their information inside the JSS, and actually kind of compare and review. And it gives them a good opportunity to have insight into what we're expecting or how we even use our own product. Yeah. It's a very important thing to be able to keep that line of communication, I think, inside of this company. And then at the same time, I have OneNote, Microsoft's OneNote, up on the screen. So if I have an issue with an iPad in one of the rooms, because we have them to control projectors and all the fun AV systems, this is actually what I was doing just a couple days ago, going through writing down serial numbers, looking up their configurations inside the JSS, highlighting, using the Apple Pencil to make notes to myself and write things down. Yeah. So yeah, it's a singular tool I can use at the desk on a keyboard, or I can travel with it, use a pencil, and it maintains that context. I'm not moving between devices and kind of losing place of things.
Yeah. So, verdict for you, how often do you use your Mac now?
So I still have Macs around. Fortunately, I work on a team where we can have like a shared Mac model. Yeah. If I need one for something specific with Thunderbolt or Firewire, doing imaging or whatever the case may be, I can go find that Mac and use it. But my iPad is my primary device. Even so, where I'm morphing it into being more of a personal device beyond even just my work device.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for your insight there. It's fun to see you running around the halls with your iPad Pro. So next, I want to talk a little bit about just iOS in the enterprise in general, right? Why is iOS so great? Why is iOS being adopted by organizations at a pace that other mobile operating systems aren't being adopted as? Well, it's because it plays extremely well in the enterprise. Apple's known for using the best, most efficient hardware that's out there. They're making their own processors, right? They've got native encryption that's built into these devices to make sure it's secure for the enterprise. They're building in amazing features for security like Touch ID, which allows you to just use your fingerprint to unlock the phone or even to just log into some apps now, which is really amazing. And of course, speaking of apps, there's so many productivity apps out there, including Microsoft Office. It's got built-in support for all the modern networking that you'd want, including VPN and single sign-on. And of course, it supports things like Microsoft Exchange right out of the box. Now, what do organizations need in order to manage all this iOS stuff? Well, they need something called Mobile Device Management, or MDM. And MDM can really help with a lot of different things here, from deploying to inventory to configuring these devices, making them secure, and pushing out apps. And if you want to know more about MDM, I'd highly recommend that you check out some of our other webinars that dive really deep into the aspects of MDM. But really, when you kind of add this all up here, we have MDM in place, you get some of the best hardware available, and you have apps. You end up with some happy, productive employees. I want to bring in Josh here again real quickly. And Josh, I'm wondering if you could just comment about your experience with the rich app experience on iPad Pro and working here at Jamf at the same time.
Yeah, you bet. I think really what stood out to me from an app standpoint were a few of the things that made getting around across multiple services as easy as possible. So we use Exchange at Jamf. I loved using Outlook on iPad Pro because of how well all of our file sharing services were integrated, plus the view of calendars, contacts, email. It all felt very integrated. And so I had this system that allowed me to communicate, pull information, pull documents, save information, etc., all packaged into one application. And I found I spent a lot of time using Outlook to get access to all of those things. Beyond that, then, when I needed to do some of that UI review or those markup on documents, there's a couple of apps that I really, really enjoyed using. The first, which Mike also mentioned, is called Procreate, and that's kind of like it's a layer-based application. So you can add layer on top of layer and do sketching, writing, import photos or images or other documents, and then annotate them. And so that was very useful. And then I would say finally, kind of one of the big third-party apps that was so helpful was PDF Expert. I did a lot of signing documents and forwarding on forms, things like that. And it's a tool that allows you to open zip files, annotate PDFs, flatten PDFs, merge PDFs, all kinds of stuff like that. So that was very handy. And then finally, the last app, and this is kind of I know this sounds self-serving, but it's very true, that helped out was our self-service app. Because when I was embracing this new platform full time, I knew that there were things I wasn't going to know stepping in on day one as far as which apps were best and which productivity tools I should use or what was available to me that Jamf already owned licenses for through the VPP service. And so when I started up self-service, I could see all of that stuff kind of offered up to me as an employee of the company in the sales department and see that IT had already thought through what are the best iOS apps you might need to get your job done on a day-to-day basis. And so self-service just ended up being a kind of a killer app for me as well.
For that insight there, Josh. So I want to now focus on our last topic that we have here, which is some best practices for deploying iPad Pro in your organization. Generally speaking, you want to start off with a plan. Work with your shareholders in your organization. Kind of map it out first. See what you want it to look like, and then test it. Test. When you think about iOS, think about what do I want to enable on these devices versus what do I need to disable on them. It's different than your traditional desktop management. And if you kind of look at this for how you do this in a step-by-step way, you'd want to first start off by preparing, meaning sign up for all these Apple deployment programs that they have, kind of test your infrastructure, figure out your Apple ID strategy. Then you want to configure these devices by building out the configuration profiles and defining what restrictions you want on there, building in email accounts so it makes it easy for your end users to just get what they need. Look at buying all the apps that you want. Josh just talked about all these great apps that you can purchase, and that a lot of them are free as well too. And you can assign them now to either users or devices. And then look at how do you want to deploy these things. Do you want to just ship them directly to your users? If you're using DEP, you can do exactly that. And then finally, look at ongoing management. Populate that self-service app, adjust your profiles, and learn from others. This is what self-service looks like. If you're not familiar with it, that has the ability to serve as like your app catalog and to serve as your central point for bringing everything in here. Now, Mike has been deeply involved with deploying iPads here at Jamf, and we recently made a switch over to DEP. Can you talk a little bit about your experience deploying iPads here and kind of what you've learned from it?
Certainly. So if you're not familiar with DEP, the device enrollment program from Apple, we have plenty of documentation. Apple has their business website, which goes through much detail of how it operates. But ideally, what you have is an Apple ID connected to a free DEP account from Apple, and it's a proof of ownership for a device. So if you buy an iOS device directly from Apple, or if you buy from specific authorized Apple resellers, it actually connects the serial number of the device that you have back to Apple and integrates with something like the JSS to be able to say, yep, this company, this person definitively owns this device, and nobody else can configure it and set it up except for them, like activation log in that way. So what it allows for, what it enables for, is being able to give a device to an employee, wherever they are in the world, as long as DEP is kind of supported in that region, and it allows them to go through the setup of the device as if it were their own personal device. And that's the idea. You make these devices, or allow these devices to be personalized by the employee, by the end user, and they take care of it more, they use it, and they enjoy using it. So they get the whole experience of being able to unwrap the box, take the device out, turn it on, and there's zero configuration from the IT end. We don't ever have to take it out of the box for them. We don't have to get our fingerprints all over it. They get to enjoy it. They get to go through the configuration. And as an IT administrator, using DEP as like a launch pad, I get to use the JSS to say, here's your configuration profiles to connect to our wireless network. Here's how you get your email configuration automatically. It's all silent. It just kind of happens. And they log in with their Apple ID. They get their content, their apps. They get self-service from us. And so then they get our apps. So if we decide that they want to have access to specific things like Microsoft Office on iPad, they can go to self-service and download it from self-service, and we can make it available for them when they want it.
Yeah. Now, we didn't start off with DEP, right? Because it's a program that's only been out now for 2 years. How hard was it to transition over to DEP?
So when you buy devices now that we're enrolled in DEP, it automatically gets dropped in to our portal, but also into the JSS and pre-stages and all that. But at the same time, you can actually go to Apple and request any devices that you've purchased in the past since March of 2011 and take those retroactive purchases and drop them into DEP. So you can actually take advantage of this with older devices, maybe not all of them, and there's still a process for getting them re-enrolled, but you can have visibility on them and get them into the JSS and work with them from there.
That's great, yeah. And I know, just talking to you and, of course, everyone else in IT, just how much easier everything has been since rolling out DEP. So thanks for your insight there. Let me wrap it up now here. So you may be wondering, great, what next steps can I take? This sounds like some really good information. Well, first off, I'd recommend that you join Jamf Nation. Jamf Nation is our free online community. It's led by peers. There are a bunch of Apple-focused IT admins that just love Apple products and love to manage them. And so you can learn a lot just by browsing the forums and, of course, participating as well, too. Then reach out to us, right? Contact us to get started with either a free trial or a demo, or if you just want to watch some more videos, we've got some really great demo videos that kind of get a little more hands-on with the product. And of course, we have a bunch of other webinars too. If you want to dive deeper into the topic of DEP, or if you want to dive deeper into the topic of imaging Macs, we have all these sort of webinars online as well too. So with that, I want to thank everybody. Hope you have a wonderful day.